Hey guys, welcome to today's episode. So we are in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I have a very special guest. I have here Judith from International Property Settlement, and her company specializes in helping people to buy property overseas, also get residence and citizenship and all of that. So she knows a lot about this industry. Judith, it's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about what International Property Settlement does and how you help people?
Sure. We started the business about 15 years ago, and it was named Rescom before, and we changed the name to International Property Settlements because in Rescom Australia, we started selling Australian property. So we sold property primarily in Melbourne because in Malaysia, the demand was more for Melbourne because a lot of us have an affinity with Melbourne, having graduated from Melbourne universities such as University of Melbourne, RMIT, Monash. So we launched the company launching properties in Melbourne to sell in Asia Pacific, in Malaysia, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, but primarily Malaysia. And since then, we have actually transacted more than 500 properties.
Wow.
Yeah, there is a project called Australia 108. That's, I suppose, our claim to fame. It is the tallest residential tower in the Southern Hemisphere. And we transacted 70 in there over the course of actually about 2 months. So that was an exciting time. Since then, we have diversified to sell property in other countries to Asia Pacific. Such as properties in the UK, properties even within Asia Pacific, like from Thailand to Malaysia, Malaysian properties in Hong Kong, and somehow we specialize in selling properties from one country to another. And here we are. So recently, since the Europe Golden Visas have come in, we have also been specializing in selling properties in Europe to the Asian Pacific market.
So you help these people, mostly in Asia Pacific, if they want to buy a property overseas, is it mainly just for investment or it's also to get the residence or citizenship or a bit of both?
For the Europe product, I suppose, where properties such as in Spain and Portugal primarily, and Greece qualify for a program called the Golden Visa, whether it's the Portugal Golden Visa, Spain Golden Visa, or the Greece Golden Visa, that somehow ties in with a residency. Although I would like to say that our focus is to focus on an investment which is great for diversification anyway. So for the owner of the property to have yield, to have capital appreciation, to have a good chance of capital appreciation. So the residency is the extra, and what we're focusing on is a good investment.
That's good because I see a lot of programs out there where you have to buy property to get the residence or the citizenship, but the reality is the property investment doesn't always have much of a return, if any. So you focus on properties that actually will give some kind of return.
That's right. Yeah. I'm a chartered accountant by profession, and I also look at property investment myself. So basically, I look at it in terms of the numbers. So doing due diligence on that particular investment, on that particular property, making sure that from the ownership, from the possibility of sort of owning a property freehold to the rental return, who's going to rent, the location, and sort of the location, whether it had a track record of capital appreciation in the past.
Yeah.
So the property, I think, or the asset that the client invests in is important to us. With part of this residency, they have an asset that they're proud to hold and that will make them money.
Let's focus on Portugal for a moment. Mm-hmm. So for someone who's never been to Portugal, I don't think I've ever actually been there myself. Mm-hmm. Just in a nutshell, why would someone want to move to Portugal? Tell us a little bit about what it's like to live there and the country as a whole.
Portugal is actually a good country for investment. In the early 2010, it was property prices were it fell a lot because they were having a financial crisis, or Europe in general. And since then, property prices have been creeping up. So it's a good chance for investors to take advantage of the improvement in the economy in general, in terms of in property. So property-wise, but Portugal has also a stable government. It's also a great place in Europe where the weather is much nicer than the rest of Europe. It's a sort of a Mediterranean climate. So, and in fact, they have 300 sunny. They're very proud of their 300 sunny days per year. There is a place in Algarve which a lot of us in Asia Pacific would see as like the Bali of Europe. So there's a lot of holiday makers that will go there, not only for summer, but in winter for a little bit more warm. And the economy is slowly but surely improving. They have a lot of, in terms of property, a lot of focus, in the economy, a lot of focus on ESG, environment and all that. They're very lucky to have a lot of sunlight. They're also by the coast where there's a lot of wind energy. So I think that the country as a whole is a great place for investment.
So it's always warm there, basically. Never snows.
It never snows. There are some mountains apparently or hills that will snow, but yeah, even in winter. So I was there in December. It was sort of around the 20 degree, and a minimum of say 10. It's very pleasant.
Okay, so it's a nice place to live. But you're saying people, if they want to buy the property and get the Golden Visa, the 5-year Golden Visa, they don't need to stay there the whole time. So you said, what was it, 7 days per year?
Average 7 days per year. I think that the attraction of the Golden Visa is not only sort of in the possibility to live there, though they can, but to have access to Europe via a residency card, which then they can use to travel throughout Europe without applying for a visa. And then also with this card, they can live and work and have healthcare benefits in Portugal. In Portugal, if it's Portugal, the Portugal Golden Visa. In Spain, if it's the Spain Golden Visa. In Greece, if it's the Greece Golden Visa. But they have this Schengen card. Regardless of the programs, they will have these these 3 programs. The card entitles them to travel within Europe and Schengen because these countries are part of Europe. And Schengen.
Schengen, for people who don't know, Schengen is a group of countries in Europe. What are some countries in the Schengen?
There are 27, I believe, countries in Europe. And I think 2 countries have been added very recently, like over the past week or month. And it includes Switzerland as well. So it's quite a precious, I suppose, card to have, particularly for high net worth individuals. Particularly for our clients in countries like Philippines, in Indonesia, where their passport doesn't allow travel to too many countries. So with this, they get access to the 27 countries in Europe without needing to apply for a travel visa.
Does this mean, so for those 5 years, once they have the Schengen card, so they could go and live in any of these countries if they want?
They can only live in the country they have the Golden Visa. So if it's Portugal, it's Portugal, and Spain, it's Spain. For the Portugal program, so in the first 5 years, yesterday a new announcement was announced. So after submission of the Golden Visa, the 5 years starts ticking. Then they have to stay an average of 7 days per year. Actually, it's 14 days every 2 years. So it's 14 days in year 1 and 2. They get the next card 14 days in year 3 and 4. Then they prove the 14 days and then they get the next card. They stay the last 7 days. So it's a 5-year program and then they can apply for citizenship.
Okay.
Once they have Portuguese citizenship, well, they are citizen and citizens of Portugal have access throughout Europe. So they can live and work and have the benefits of Europe, say in France, and if it's in Portugal, in Spain, in any of the European countries. So I think a lot of our clients are looking for that access to Europe at the end of the day, not only for themselves, but their children. So say their children study in Europe, they have access to education benefits and work experience in Europe as well. Yeah. So yeah, it's a great program and a lot of benefits.
So I have the Schengen card. I can stay, let's say I've got the Portugal Golden Visa. I can stay in Portugal if I want, live there for 5 years. And then travel to all these other 26 different countries. I think you said 26. How long can I stay in the different countries? Is it just like tourist visa or?
You can stay 90 out of 183 days out of 180 days in any of these countries.
Oh, okay.
So basically once you enter into Portugal, with the card, You can actually travel around Europe. It's quite borderless.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I can see how that would be a big plus for someone who, they had to apply for visas in every single different country. Maybe their passport doesn't allow that. Okay, so I would get that residence card. Now, what do I need to do to get this 5-year golden visa? Like, how much money do I need to invest into property? Can you walk us through that?
For Portugal, basically, there's sort of mainly 3 rules. One, a qualifying investment, then staying an average of 7 days per year, and a clean criminal record. So those are mainly the 3 requirements. The other requirements, but these are mainly the 3 requirements. And the initial one is, of course, a qualifying investment. Prior to October 2023, property investments used to qualify. So, and in October, the government changed to not allow property investments to qualify applicants for the Golden Visa anymore. And mainly the reason was they said that the Golden Visa investors were going in and increasing property prices, so sort of, pushing up property prices, making properties unaffordable for purchasing and even for rental for the local market. Sort of to control that, they then changed the Golden Visa law. And so now, after post-October 2023, different types of investments or the popular different types of investments that will qualify will be probably to own a business and to hire 5 staff. So to invest in a business, a minimum investment of 500,000 and hire 5 staff.
Euros, 500,000 euros.
500,000 euros. That's the one of, I think, the popular routes, which will sort of be marketed more post now in 2024.
Could that be your own business? You want to start, say, a brand new restaurant or a digital marketing business or any of those?
You can, absolutely. So if you invest 500,000 in your business and hire 5 staff in a digital marketing business or in a restaurant, can be in a winery. So the key is, I suppose, to invest. The investment must go in the minimum investment of 500,000 and then the staffing.
The investment. So is that just putting the money into a bank account in Portugal and saying that's all for the business, or you actually have to buy things like equipment, rent premises? Like, what I'm asking is, let's say you're a digital nomad, you have your business online, you have a few virtual staff around the world. Would that qualify for the 500K, and where would the 500K go?
Yes. So in my understanding, yes, it would qualify. So the rules will be to show a company incorporation injecting 500,000 in, and the proof that you have created 5 jobs, so 5 permanent staff.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right.
So
okay.
That's one. The other one is a simpler sort of a route, and that's investment in a fund. And the fund, it's a venture capital fund where there are some, I believe, perhaps about 30 funds that have that are existing or will be coming up, where investors can choose to invest in funds, from funds that invest in AI companies, funds that invest in stocks and shares, funds that invest in businesses, sort of various different businesses such as ESG businesses. And these funds then have a target yield and a target sort of a plan on what it is. The minimum investment again is 500,000, and in general they're locked in for around 8 years in this fund, and like the 500,000 is locked in for 8 years. Usually the funds will then have a target yield and a target sale at the end of the day, with profits distributions as well to the investors.
These funds, are they so they're all government approved funds?
Yes. So
are they government run, or it's
They're not government run, but the funds have to be approved by their Securities Commission, which is called CMVM, yes.
Got it. Okay, so there's about 30 to choose from, and are they
I
all
believe so, yes.
Yeah. Are they all in different industries? Some in, you said AI, some in...
Yes, agriculture. So our task is then to, when a client is keen to sort of run through the different funds, whether they might be familiar with the industry perhaps, and they might want to sort of invest in this industry, and some are based on, say, the lowest management fee, the highest target yield, and we sort of match the client with the investment. They need not invest in just one fund. Sometimes the minimum investment for a fund is, say, 50,000 or 100,000, so they can invest in a sort of a mix of the funds. But the minimum investment has to be 500,000 euros.
So there's the fund, there's the business. Anything else?
There are donations to the government and all that for like scientific activities and art activities. I think that's 250,000 euros. We don't really focus on that.
You don't get your money back.
You don't get your money back. So we don't really... I believe there are philanthropists out there who would invest in that, but we don't really focus on it. Mainly it is the funds and also investment in a business.
Do you see Portugal going back to the property, or do you think that's going to be a long-lasting change that they don't allow the 500k into property?
Unfortunately, I think that would be a long-lasting change. I miss it because I think that investing in property is something that, sort of you can feel and hold and exactly.
You can go there and actually see the place. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's say that I want to go ahead with this, or someone watching and they say, okay, I want to get the 5-year Golden Visa for Portugal. I want to invest in a mixture of these funds for the 500k. What's the time frame and process from making a decision to do that to actually getting that card and having this all be 100% set up?
They've made some changes to their immigration department lately to make the process more efficient. I would say that from the time of... So usually our clients come to us and we do an initial sort of consultation, and they ask us about questions such as, can they reunify certain family members? Every family is unique, and so we sort of, come up with sort of almost like a cost plan for them in terms of how much it costs and everything. And then we look into the different types of investments. We might interview the funds and all that. That process usually takes around 2 weeks from the time they call us, around 2 weeks. And then they plan for the investment. So a lot of them would have like fixed deposits and all that. So it depends on when they can invest. Then when they invest to when they get the card, I would say it would take around 6 months. Yeah,
6 months.
6 months.
So 6 months from having that 500k ready to be sent.
To be sent the card. From the time of investment of the 500,000, it would take 6 months for what they call an online approval or a pre-approval, meaning their lawyer usually will receive an email saying, okay, your client is approved. That's why it's online. And then they go for their biometrics. So they pick a date. So a calendar opens up and we pick a date for their biometrics. And then they go do their biometrics, and then around a month later, the card it comes out, and then that gets mailed to them by courier.
So within those 6 months from having the 500k ready, they've got to fly to Portugal, do this biometric. What is it exactly? It's fingerprints and things.
Yes, it's fingerprints. It's an interview. It's a very sort of a basic interview. Basically, they actually would have submitted all the documents already, so they call it an interview, and then they do the biometrics. So they do the fingerprinting, and then about a month later, they get the card. So from the time of investment to the pre-approval or the online approval, around 6 months.
Yeah.
Then they book a date to go to Portugal. So depending when they can travel, they do the biometrics, and then the card should be produced around a month later. The lawyer usually receives it on their behalf, and then it gets couriered to them.
So then they would have their card, and then at that point they can start traveling.
They can start traveling, yes. And they can start traveling, and they can start living, working. Their kids get education benefits in Portugal.
They can get bank accounts, go and live there if they want, all of that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, these funds, is this a new thing? Like, do they have results and a steady track record, or they're relatively new funds?
So they're both. We have funds that are new. So prior to, again, October last year, some funds that we were recommending have been investing in properties. So those funds also no longer qualify because they don't want any sort of pressure or influence on the property market anymore. Yeah. However, there are still funds that invested in agriculture and a lot of technology companies, and these funds are still raising investment. So some have carried forward from that time, and they have funds that or fund managers who have track records of funds and then current funds which are still open for investment. Then there are a lot of new funds which obviously probably have been started because there is this opportunity to raise investment.
I imagine the number one priority for people, if they just want that golden visa, a lot of them maybe a nice return would be great, but they want to make sure they get all their 500k back.
Exactly.
But you're saying that these are all highly regulated and the Securities Exchange, not the
Securities Commission, or they call it CMVM, yes.
Yeah. They're checking everything and making sure they've got good fund managers.
That's right. From the authorities, the CMVM, to the fund managers, to the auditors, they are in place in a term sheet, and that's usually the summary which we provide the clients, and then they kind of, okay, I think this one would be one that I'd like to meet, and another one, and then we start with that.
What happens at the end of the 5 years? Can I then apply to become a citizen of Portugal, or how does that work?
Yeah, you can, and there's just one more criteria, which is a simple Portuguese test. So that's, again, in a way, a little bit of our job towards the end, like towards the sort of that last year. We would recommend you a list of maybe Portuguese schools, or workshops, Portuguese workshops. And it's quite a simple test, I understand. And I think that, it should be no problem to get through the test. So that's the only other criteria, a simple Portuguese. It's at level A2. So in language, there is level A1 to 6, I think, and then after that, C, it becomes C to 6. So it's at actually level A2. So it is a very basic level of understanding and communication.
Like just basic conversational, or not even at that level?
Basic conversational, yes, because there is a little bit of a verbal part where they introduce themselves, or
So you got to learn some Portuguese, and then from that point on, you're saying you could get an actual passport, a Portuguese passport.
That's right.
Does that have an additional cost, or is it just it's relatively affordable?
It's relatively affordable. It's just an additional cost of a few €100 to get this card. At each level, they get 3 cards. There is a cost. So, and these costs are, they are something like almost 6,000 in the first card, and then 3,000 in the next card, and €3,000 in the next card. So these cards have costs, but when it comes to the citizenship, then it's a few €100 for the passport, and then of course they have to renew it.
Okay, now just explain that part again. So the card itself, if I want to get this golden visa, the card itself, what are the costs for the card itself?
About 6,000, including from the application fee to the card issuance fee, and then 3,000 for the next card. So they get 3 cards in the 5 years. About 6,000, 3,000, and 3,000.
About 12,000 all up. These are for the cards plus the 500k into the fund. We're talking euros.
Yes.
That's really interesting. So you get the passport in 5 years. That's good to know. Now, let's go to Spain. So Spain is still allowing the property investment, right?
Yes. May I reverse a little bit? So it is 500,000, and then the cost. So 500,000 is not really a cost; it's an investment.
Right.
And then what they pay is legal fee of. It ranges between 5, I would say, to about €10,000, depending on the lawyer. So 500,000 investment, legal fees, then the cost of the card, which is 6,000, 3,000, 3,000. But meanwhile, they're making money from their investment in terms of a yield or the distributions from the fund. And so it's not really a cost. That's why we almost produce like a business plan in a way, which is a 7-year business plan. So from day one to the time that they get issued the citizenship, we aim to calculate as accurately as possible. It's a forecast, of course, because it's an investment of where they will be. At the end of the day, we aim to actually, in the whole process, make them money, rather than, that these cards have a cost and of course the initial legal fees. So, and that's personally, from my experience, because I'm an accountant, I like to sort of, be able to project clearly or as clearly as possible what the client, needs to spend and ends up with.
That's a good way to look at it. So to actually try and make money getting the passport.
Yes. Yes, or at least break even, but hopefully make money. Yeah, and capital preservation. So that 500,000 to hopefully preserve it. Yeah.
Yes. So with Spain, we can spend the 500K and actually buy property.
Yes.
What types of properties can you get? Is that any type of property?
Any type of property. So it can be from an apartment in Barcelona and Madrid, which I think is the most popular option, to commercial, which we specialize in. I'll talk about that later. But it can be land, it can be a farm, it can be anything actually. And the great thing is Spain doesn't have two rules for investment in terms of if foreigners buy or if locals buy. Unlike, I suppose, Australia and Singapore, where there are stamp duty surcharges. So for a Malaysian to buy property in Australia, there's often more stamp duties that foreigners pay. There's also an FIRB application fee to consider. But in Spain, foreigners can buy property in Spain without stamp duty surcharges or any other fees to the government. And the properties are freehold usually.
So as a foreigner, we'd be paying the same as a local.
That's right.
Oh, that's good.
In terms of purchasing costs, yes.
Is there any kind of minimum that you can buy on property as a foreigner? Is there a minimum amount that you need to spend?
There isn't. So, however, for the Golden Visa, the minimum investment is 500,000.
Right.
But in terms of buying a property, say if one doesn't target a Golden Visa, which I've had many investors before, because these properties are actually good for investment. Mm-hmm. I'll cover that later. It's great to invest in Spain anyway, particularly now. There's, I think, a good chance of capital appreciation. Tourism has come in, I think, again, and I think the economy will significantly benefit from that over the next. Actually now till the next 5 years. The minimum investment is 500,000 for a Golden Visa applicant. They can invest in, again, a mix of properties. So if they find a property that's 100,000 euros, they can invest in a few properties of...
Oh, so they could buy several.
They can buy several. So several 100,000 euro property. A lot of the time I would encourage a client to say invest in a property for say around 250,000 euros and then another around 250,000 euros. If they want to stay or have a holiday home, they can also then have a commercial property and then a property they can have as a holiday home for 250,000 euros. So again, depending, but then some of my clients say, I just want one property because It's just simpler to manage, and that's fine too. So we source a property for them for around 500,000 and above. So 510,000, 515,000. And that's in a way, when I look at all our property listings, my eyes focus on the around 500,000 for obvious reasons that the minimum investment is 500,000 and that's our demand.
Let's say I want to live in Madrid.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I want to be somewhere central Madrid. What could I get as far as apartment? Would it be like something that's brand new, and what would I get?
So for say this area, the equivalent, which is Salamanca, which is very central of Madrid, for 500,000 you wouldn't get a lot at the moment. So I think a decent apartment would be around 700,000 euros. So that's, for me, not really my focus because, again, I look at the property as an investment. I feel that properties around the center of the city have very little chance of capital appreciation and a lower yield. So we tend to go outside, a little bit outside the third ring road. So Madrid has a ring road, so it starts from the third ring road to the fourth to the fifth. So we tend to go a little bit outside the third ring road where we spot properties in there which are, I would say, a little bit of still nice suburbs, but they're being regentrified a little bit more and all that. And there's a scope for growth in terms of the prices and also the yield. So that's in a way a little bit of our focus and sort of planning, in a way investment planning for our clients.
Most of the properties are in Madrid, or you also go to different areas in Spain?
We have properties in Madrid and Barcelona, and also in sort of the beach areas as well. So more Marbella and all that. More tourism hotspots. But my favorite, I think, would be still properties in Madrid. Obviously, it's the capital, and there's more activity there, there's more population there. And where I see sort of as a most passive investment where they kind of just leave it, probably the best investments are commercial units. From an Asian perspective, shop lots, we would call. So ground floor shop lots that have been rented out and have long-term tenancies to companies like Carrefour or KFC or dental clinics or doctors' clinics. These tenants obviously know that they want to set that up. So over there, so in terms of the location due diligence, the tenant has already done the location due diligence. They have usually already been renting or will be about to rent and have signed long-term tenancy agreements, as in 10 years or even 15 years, 20 years tenancy agreements in these areas. And they already have an existing yield of at least 5%. That's what we source. So then the tenant doesn't have risks in terms of investing in a property, in terms of construction risk, whether it's built or not. And nowadays, where construction costs has gone up so high, I think a lot of property investors have invested in something and it hasn't completed yet. And so no building risk, no things like approval risk or council risk, no yield risk because there's an existing tenancy agreement, and generally in that area a good chance of capital appreciation.
So you're able to help these clients find commercial property. So you said like clients like KFC and so on. I think that's very clever because, like you say, they've done the due diligence, they've found the up and coming areas. That's a good way to do it.
Yeah. So if, say, Carrefour, which is a supermarket, wants to position themselves in this area, they would have done their own due diligence on the foot traffic in the area and all that. So in a way, they've kind of done our homework for us, whether this is a good investment or not. And then they have signed a long-term tenancy. So obviously they are, and usually with quite a long mandatory period. So they've already they are invested in it already as well. And these are big brands.
Ballpark, I mean, are you able to find these premises for 500,000 euros, or are they usually a bit more if we're talking about, tenants like KFC?
Exactly. So KFC properties that we source are bigger because they require bigger premises. So they start from $1 million, but then it can qualify 2 golden visas. So say family members like brother and sister who are adults and independent, they can't reunify each other. So they may want to invest together in, say, one KFC. However, we also have around in the 500,000 minimum investments, doctors' clinics, Carrefour Express, which is like our 7-Elevens and all that here, dental clinics, sometimes beauty salons and all that, which are also great investments because, again, the tenant would have done a lot of renovation inside in terms of putting all their equipment, their medical equipment, the dental equipment inside, and so they are unlikely to move out, and they also make great tenants, being professional. How
do you find these sound like very good properties? How do you find them?
As part of our sort of network of how we have found properties in Australia for sale in Malaysia and sort of UK, we have a network of agents in Europe that then provide us properties, and basically I look at them, I interview them, and then I narrow down to a dossier of properties, and every month that's around 30 in my listing, and basically I ask and I hope my clients pick from there. But if they want something else, I have sort of ideas of where to source these properties for them. But basically around 500,000 properties, or properties around 250,000 where I can match with another property. That's where sort of I start with, just so the client doesn't get confused.
Mm-hmm. What about like boutique hotels, things like that? Have you ever had a client invest in a hotel?
I haven't had a client invest in a hotel, but I certainly have boutique hotels for sale. Actually, I was just in Lisbon in beginning of December, so just about a month and a half ago. It's a beautiful hotel in the heart of Chiado, and I think it's a great investment, a 21-room hotel.
How much is it? Ballpark?
It's 8 million euros. But as part of this, as part of our investments, we also structure loans for our clients. So, they can raise a loan of about, I think, 4 million euros, depending on sort of, how they want to structure it, about 4 million euros. So, so they can invest in 4 million euros in a boutique hotel. That's one. We have others that are listed for, say, 30 million euros or 10 million euros. As I mentioned, we have like a network of real estate professionals who actually source these investments for us, whether they are wineries, lots of interesting things, sardine factories, lots of interesting transactions and lots of interesting businesses for our clients to look at.
Okay, so if I want that Spain Golden Visa, that's the obvious thing to me is, okay, property, 500k property. But what are the other options? If I didn't want to get property, what else can I do to get that Golden Visa?
500,000 in property is the lowest investment and I think the most attractive. But they can also invest in stocks and shares, government bonds, but those go from like a minimum investment of 1 million euros or 2 million euros. Basically, because I'm, I suppose, a property person, a property is where we focus on, and it's the minimum investment anyway. And I feel that the properties are attractive.
Okay, so back to properties. How long do I have to hold that property as part of this 5-year Golden Visa?
So moving on, I suppose, to Spain more. The Spain Golden Visa does not qualify a general investor, like a world investor for citizenship. It is a Golden Visa program. As long as they hold a property, or a mixture of properties at a minimum investment of 500,000, they can hold the Golden Visa card.
But for how long do I have to hold the property? Do I have to keep it for the whole 5 years of the 5-year Golden Visa?
You can sell and buy another property, but at any time, particularly during the renewal of the card, we need to prove that you hold a property or a portfolio of properties of a minimum investment of 500,000. That's a great question though. So a lot of the properties that we look at, I can project a return after tax in 5 years of at least 30%. So say from day one, they invest and they actually get the card 6 months later. For Spain, it's also about 6 months later they get the card. Once they get the card, they hold the property, say, for another 4.5 years. Oh, the first card is valid for 3 years, and then the next card for 5 years, and then the next card for 5 years. So anytime during the renewal of the cards, we need to prove that they hold a property or a mix of property of 500,000 minimum investment. Now, once the property appreciates in price, to a certain extent, my goal is then to ask the client, do you want to sell? When you want to sell, we find a buyer and then they get back their capital and their profits and they invest the minimum investment of 500,000 again in another property.
And the gap between the two, doesn't matter if it's a few weeks, a few months.
Yeah, as long as it's not during the time of the renewal of the cards, we actually have time. So that timing, again, I'd like to arrange because the first card is valid for 3 years. So usually our clients will keep the property for a minimum of 3 years. Anyway, in property, it's good to keep for at least 5 years. So then in the middle of the second card, we will then, consult the client on, your property has increased by this much. Would you like to now sell? And then we have, a network of buyers, whether they're funds and all that, who invest in commercial properties and then invest in something else. So, and then they can take the capital back. Again, that is my personal aim of trying to achieve good investment for the client for general diversification of funds. And the Golden Visa or the citizenship for Portugal is the cherry on the pie, actually. They've made money on their property or on their investment already.
Yeah. Now, let's say I buy a property for 500k and after 2 years, it's gone up in value by 20%. I'm really happy with that. So I sell it. What happens with the taxes on my profit? Am I paying tax on the profit to the government of Spain, or how does that work?
Yes, so we actually have like a business plan where we calculate all costs, like from purchasing cost to annual cost to tax, and we project it from year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. And yes, you will be paying tax. So from rental income, you pay a tax of 24%, and for Spain. And in Portugal, it's 28%, so rental income. And then from the capital appreciation, it's also 24% of the gain. Yeah, so
So if I make 100k profit, I'm paying 24,000 to the government. Okay, got it.
At a maximum, because you can deduct purchasing. You can deduct some costs, selling costs and all that, but yes.
Got it. Okay. And roughly, if I want to buy a property worth 500K, what kind of fees are we looking at for that transaction and lawyer fees and all of that? What ballpark, what would we look at?
Yeah. Lawyer fees are generally 1% of the price. So, and their VAT is 21%, so 1.21%. That's general. We can negotiate, particularly if the property is above 500,000. Usually, I would assist the client to negotiate. But generally, 1%.
The 500K does that take into account those transaction fees as well, or it's 500K actually just on the property itself?
It's 500K just on the property. So generally, in terms of stamp duties and lawyer fees and all that, for a commercial property, it's about plus the 1%, so 5K, and plus 1.5% of stamp duty. Around maybe 15 or 17K covers most of the purchasing costs.
For Portugal, at the end of the 5 years, I can possibly get a passport. How does it work with Spain? If I want to become a citizen of Spain, get their passport, how does that work?
Yeah. I suppose the unique thing about Spain is stamp duties for commercial property and for residential property is treated differently. So commercial property, the stamp duties range between 1.5% to 2%, commercial properties. Residential properties, depending on the state, it ranges from 8 to 10%. So that's why, just numbers-wise, buying a commercial property works better because the upfront cost is much lower, and so the time to wait for the capital appreciation is also cut shorter because otherwise we have to recover the costs in terms of what we paid for in terms of stamp duty. So that's why, in terms of numbers, I always find commercial property just works better in terms of a business plan. And if our clients then say, but we want to go to Spain to stay, then I would advise them to kind of split it, 250,000 in a commercial property, 250,000 in a property they can treat as a holiday home, or to take the rental and rent a place, and then they can travel. They can stay a few months in Madrid, a few months in Barcelona, a few months in Marbella, and still sort of have a place where they can, have a holiday home, but in terms of renting. So that's kind of a little bit of a trick or an advice that I can sort of give the clients. Commercial property have a lower stamp duty, and therefore they make better investments.
Got it. So if I want to get the passport for Spain, how does that work?
For Spain, with the passport in general, one would have to stay a significant amount of time for 10 years before they can apply for citizenship. So, which means staying more than half a year for 10 years. And so they seriously want to stay in Spain for the citizenship.
Half a year for each year, or just half a year for the total time?
Half a year for each year. Yeah, so in general, it's not a citizenship program. It's more a Golden Visa program. So it's a visa by investment program, and it's for this Schengen card.
Okay, so if I do want to get a passport, I should go to Portugal. That would be the easier one than Spain.
But yeah, for Malaysians, certainly Portugal is the way to get the Portuguese passport if they want.
Now, if I only want to get that Golden Visa, the 5-year Golden Visa, what would you recommend out of Spain and Portugal? What's your personal favorite? Because
I'm a property person, I think that property investments are better. And that's in a way my own core competency in terms of advisory. And so I think that investing in a property is probably more attractive. However, I think that there are a lot of businesses in Portugal that are worth investing in as well. And some of the funds are very attractive as well. And some of the funds have, in fact, a target yield of more than 10%. So that could, in effect, return more than a property, a general property in either country.
I want to just change topics a little bit. Earlier on, you mentioned something about loans, helping clients to get loans. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So the minimum investment in these countries, in both Portugal and Spain currently, is 500,000. Sort of investments above 500,000, say in Spain where a client is investing in a KFC and it is $1 million and they just want one Golden Visa there. For the other other half of the 500,000, so 500,000 has to be in cash, and the other half 500,000 we can actually assist the client with a loan. So that's another way to go about it.
That's coming from a local bank, or that's coming from your company, or how?
Yeah, that's coming from a local bank. So we assist in the application of the loan. Yeah. So that's something quite attractive, and certainly something to consider as well, particularly if we can work out sort of this is the return that they get, this is the interest that they pay, there is usually some margin in there or some profit in there as well.
What kind of interest rates ballpark are we talking about for something like that?
It's high currently, but it's around 4%.
4%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that doesn't sound too high to me.
Yes.
In some of the countries that I
Yes.
got loans with, that sounds very reasonable.
That sounds very reasonable, particularly in compared to Australia. I think Australia is much higher now as well, in Malaysia as well. So Europe tends to have a lower interest rate overall. Eurobor is usually lower overall, especially in the past few years. So that's something to consider as well. So we do assist our clients as well in sort of, the overall sort of investment strategy and even raising debt. The initial or the investment for the Golden Visa has to come in by cash and has to come in from outside of the country. So obviously the Golden Visa is a visa by investment, and it is a way for the government of Portugal or Spain or even Greece to raise foreign investment, FDI, into their country. So that has to be by cash and from the source outside of the country.
All right. Well, those are my main questions. I think from this interview, you've got me interested a little bit. I never really considered Portugal and Spain, but now it sounds very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone's watching this and they want to get that 5-year Golden Visa, after hearing this, they know, okay, you really know this topic. It sounds like you really know everything about it. If they want to work with you, how do they get in touch with you?
You can email me on Judith, Judith, at intprops.com, or look me up on LinkedIn. I'm fairly active on LinkedIn as well. So it's just Judith Leow, Judith Leow. Google me and go on IPS website, and my email address is there as well.
Guys, I highly recommend you get in touch with Judith. Like I say, you really know your topic.
Thank you.
I'm going to want to talk to you off camera as well, because I think I might be interested in this. So Thank you so much. And guys, I hope you enjoyed that. And again, Judith, thank you. And we'll see you in the next episode.